joining our media conference, including members of our board of directors, nurses, members of other professions, guests, and media. Whether you are part of our virtual meeting or watching via live stream, we welcome you. After we present our report, we will take questions from the media. I ask that reporters use the raised hand feature to let us know if you have a question. This way, we can put you into the queue. Before we release our report, I want to acknowledge the traditional land on which RNAO resides. Our work and the work of our members takes place on traditional Indigenous territories across Ontario. We also wish to acknowledge that the Office of RNAO is located on the traditional and unceded territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. This territory was the subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Iroquois Confederacy and the Ojibwe and allied nations to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. We know some participants of this meeting are located in other traditional lands across Ontario. Today, this land is still the home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people across the Turtle Island, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this territory. By making personal a land acknowledgement, you are taking part in an act of reconciliation, honoring the land and Indigenous heritage, which dates back over 10,000 years. We encourage you to learn about the land on which you reside and the treaties that are attached to it. Land acknowledgements are an act of reconciliation, and we must all do our part. Now, I want to introduce Morgan Hofarth, RNAO's president.
Thank you, Dr. Holloway. As our president-elect just noted, we are in the midst of a special week for our profession, Nursing Week. RNAO is the professional association for registered nurses, nurse practitioners, and nursing students in Ontario. We advocate for healthy public policy, we promote excellence in nursing practice, increase nurses' contributions to shape the health system, and influence decisions that affect nurses and the public we serve. Today is the anniversary of the birth of Florence Nightingale. Born on May 12, 1820, she is regarded as the founder of modern nursing. She was a prolific writer and a statistician. She managed and trained nurses during the Crimean War, was a pioneer in infection control, and used data and research to make nursing practice decisions. She made hospitals a cleaner and safer place for those who were recovering. Practices we now know and accept as evidence-based care. She recognized that nurses had the power to see, understand, and change health systems. Her indomitable spirit lives on today as we recognize nurses' contributions to the public. The purpose of Nursing Week is to celebrate nurses in our profession. We represent the largest group of health professionals in the province, and we play a central role in the health of individuals and communities. That said, the COVID-19 pandemic has exposed vulnerabilities within our profession because despite our resilience and our commitment to patients, the past 2 years have tested nurses like never before. We have given it our all and are still giving today. We have been central to protecting and caring for Ontarians through all 6 waves of the pandemic, and yet the unrelenting stress has taken a tremendous toll on the health and well-being of Ontario's nurses. Between May and July of 2021, during the 3rd wave, RNAO distributed a detailed survey about the impact of the pandemic on nurses across the country. More than 5,000 nurses, most of them based in Ontario, responded to our survey. Nursing Through Crisis, a comparative perspective, presents our findings and compares them to similarly focused Canadian and international surveys, as well as RNAO's Work and Wellbeing Survey Results Report, which we released at the end of March 2021. As we present the results, I want to reiterate that during the pandemic, nurses were in crisis mode. These new results reflect nurses at our limit, bearing the brunt of the pandemic. The title of our report accurately describes what nurses have gone through. For 2+ years, we have literally and figuratively been nursing through crisis. We have done so at the expense of our own health and well-being and that of our family and friends. We have missed vacations, days off, significant milestones in the lives of loved ones. We have done so because this is what nurses do. We are the backbone of the health system, and yet now the backbone is bending. In our survey, we found that 73% of Canadian nurses reported that their workloads increased moderately or significantly during the pandemic. A majority of nurses were moderately or extremely concerned about their work circumstances. 60% about staffing levels, 53% about workloads, and 54% about skill mix. Only 35% of nurses said they had adequate support services to spend time with patients or clients. As a result of extremely heavy workloads and inadequate support, it's not surprising that the survey results shows that 75% of nurses were burnt out. Nurses in all sectors struggled during the pandemic. However, the experiences of hospital nurses were the most challenging while caring for the sickest patients who had COVID-19. As a result, nurses reported poorer mental health outcomes with a higher level of depression, anxiety, and stress. When you consider the length and the intensity of the pandemic, it's not surprising nurses reported being more likely to leave their position. In our survey, more than 2/3, 69% of respondents said they plan to leave their position within 5 years. And of those, 42% plan to leave the profession altogether to seek other opportunities or to retire. It's important to note that those planning to leave the nursing profession were very likely to cite one or more factors that would encourage them to stay in nursing. 68% stated better workplace supports, 63% stated reduced workload, 58% indicated the ability to adjust work schedules, and 43% selected better career development opportunities. This level of instability and the expected departures from nursing demand an urgent and comprehensive retention strategy that incorporates all the retention factors mentioned above and more. So now that we've taken the pulse of nurses, what do we do with these findings? I'm going to hand things back to Dr. Holloway, our president-elect.
Thank you, Morgan. Now, I welcome Dr. Doris Grinspan, RNAO CEO, to share our recommendations and a set of nursing programs we propose in our report in the wake of our findings.
Thank you, Dr. Holloway, and thank you, President Morgan Offord. Good morning, everyone. The numbers RNAO President Morgan Offord shared with you are both sobering and alarming. In fact, they are shocking. They are a wake-up call for our government, health employers, educators, nursing, and other associations. We must work together to get out of this crisis mode. Some context is important. We entered the pandemic with a shortfall of 22,000 RNs on a per capita basis compared to the rest in Canada. In fact, the lowest RN per population for many years in this entire rich province compared to the country. This shortfall is decades long, and with the pandemic has come home to roost. It is now a crisis that is deeper than ever in the history of nursing. We should all be concerned about what this means because it threatens our health system and by extension, the health of Ontarians. We have before us both a challenge and an opportunity to fix this deep crisis. First, we must commit to build nursing careers in Ontario through retention and recruitment. And that rebuild begins by implementing the following recommendations. Repeal Bill 124, Ontario's wage restraint legislation, and refrain from extending or imposing any further wage restraint measures on the nursing profession and on nurses. We have said this before. Those who responded to this survey said the legislation symbolizes disrespect and disregard for their chosen profession and is an important reason why nurses are leaving. Next, immediately increase the RN workforce by expediting applications and finding pathways for internationally educated nurses, INs, to become nurse practitioners, RNs, and registered practical nurses in Ontario. We have 26,000 IENs that already reside in Ontario. They are eager to join the workforce, and of those, almost 14,000 we estimate are RNs. Next, increasing enrollment and funding for baccalaureate nursing programs. Second entry and compressed programs by 10% for 7 years, and compressing the RPN, registered practical nurse, to BSCN, baccalaureate prepared nurse RN, bridging programs to 2 years. These are effective and timely ways to bolster the nursing workforce and decrease unsustainable workloads. You will see that you heard unsustainable workloads are a key factor why nurses are exhausted, stressed, and leaving. As you have heard, they're driving RNs to exit the profession, these workloads. Additional recommendations include develop and fund a Return to Nursing Now program to attract RNs back to Ontario's nursing workforce. Data from the College of Nurses of Ontario has identified thousands of registered nurses, RNs, who remain registered. So they're saying, I'm not gone, but are not participating fully or at all in Ontario's nursing workforce. We need them back. We need them taking care of Ontarians. Support nurses through their career by expanding the nursing graduate guarantee that started already a couple of months ago. It needs to continue, and it needs to be expanded even further. Reinstating the late career nurse initiative and bring back retired nurses to serve as mentors. They are eager to serve as mentors, and we need them to serve as mentors to new graduates and to the international educated nurses residing in Ontario and eager to work. These programs have been proven successful and must be ramped up, expanded in a sustained way, because they are effective ways to retain RNs in the profession, restore nursing for the public. Mentoring and better access to career development opportunities are also factors cited in our report that will keep nurses fully engaged in nursing. So for that, we are saying establish also a nursing task force to make recommendations on additional matters, additional to what we already mentioned here to you, related to the retention and recruitment of RNs. This last recommendation is crucial, and it's a recommendation that we have been asking since 2012. It is critical because our health system cannot function without proper health human resource planning and cannot function without nurses. Such a task force must examine ways to increase full-time employment opportunities, consider competitive salaries and benefits across all sectors, so nurses don't gravitate to a specific sector simply because it's better paid, like is happening now, as you know, with agency nursing. Look at ways to reduce workload, because if not, nurses will continue to leave. Increase opportunities for mentorship and professional development, and increase occupational health and safety measures. This work must start immediately if we are to improve conditions that will retain the current workforce, as well as attract and keep future generations of RNs, NPs, and RPNs. And because of that, we are going to start not a task force, but during the summer, we will start a working group with all of our colleagues within the nursing profession and representatives from mother associations to get going, so that the new government that comes, whether it's same or a different, whether it's same premier, same minister, or different ones, every single one of them will have a challenge in their hand. We want to have something ready for them and for civil servants, in addition to the recommendations in the report, where all the associations will provide solutions together. But we are not waiting. RNAO is recognized as the credible voice of NPs, RNs, and nursing students. We have a long history of supporting evidence-based practice and policy that also informs our professional development opportunities and educational offerings. Based on the survey results and echoing the needs of nurses for more workplace support, healthy work environments, mentorship, and educational opportunities, RNAO is launching free of charge and available to all nurses, RNs, RPNs, NPs, members and non-members of RNAO, a series of nursing programs that will enrich the knowledge and skills of nurses and that are necessary given the current nursing human resources crisis in nursing. For example, nurses pointed in the survey the need for nurse managers to be more visible and accessible in their workplace. Not surprising, nurse managers were pulled during the pandemic in 20,000 directions, sandwiched in many ways in the middle between what they needed to deliver and nurses needing more of their time. Many survey respondents said they were dissatisfied with their own lack of involvement in decision-making and didn't feel part of the inner working of their organizations, which meant they felt a lack of control over their jobs. These results tell us that there is an opportunity for nurse managers to get assistance in leading their nursing colleagues and ensure workplace supports and opportunities so nurses can have more control over their work, especially in the hospital sector. These are the nurses that many of them are leaving for agency work. We need to regain them in good work environments, in permanent basis, full-time positions, in hospitals, long-term care, home care, and everywhere else. Given the realities of how high workplaces demand, challenges with work-life balance, and the nursing shortage, nurse managers are in a unique position to ensure the concern of staff nurses are heard and addressed. To this end, one of the programs we are launching will inspire nurse managers to gain expertise so they can more fully engage all nurses to actively participate in organizational decision-making and become more involved in the internal governance of their organization. Nurse engagement in these areas will help gain a sense of control over one's work and working life. Our survey also found that frontline nurses working in hospitals reported lower level of support than their colleagues in other roles. All nurses need support, especially when transitioning into practice of a new role. Mentorship is crucial to retention and absolutely essential for novice nurses who provide direct care to patients. Mentorship instills confidence and reduces job strain. The program RNAO has developed and is launching includes a revised extension of the Advanced Clinical Practice Fellowship in specific areas of expertise. This program provides RNs and NPs with the self-focused learning experience that develops nursing knowledge, enhances person-centered care, and promotes positive health outcomes. It is being expanded to include areas such as leading change, equity and nursing and health and well-being, and a specific one in long-term care. This program will help us respond to nurses who indicated they want more opportunities to contribute to decision-making, want more expertise to help their organizations and to influence the workplace by developing solutions and strategies related to their own areas of practice and of passion. Next, Leadership and Management for Nurses program. This program aims to enhance the competence, confidence, and effectiveness of nurses who are in manager roles by building leadership and managerial knowledge and skills. Managers with enhanced leadership knowledge and skills are better able to work with staff, helping them to participate fully with their teams, powering them to meet professional and team goals, and addressing key challenges in the health system today. This program will support current and aspiring nurse managers to best support frontline nurses or nurses moving from one unit to another, as well as themselves, given the many demands and intensities of the role. We will begin with hospitals and long-term care manager leaders, and then we will offer the program also to community care manager leaders in public health, in home care, and in primary care. Mentorship for Nurses program. The program is for those looking for a mentor, whether it is a mentor in your own unit because you are relatively new, or whether it is a mentor because you have moved to a new sector. This program will support their professional career development and respond to the needs of support expressed, especially by early career nurses and also by nurses that choose a different specialty. Orientation programs supported by mentors are critical to effective onboarding of new staff. This program draws on the wisdom and experience of late career nurses by engaging them as mentors. Late career nurses indicated that opportunities for mentorship to help grow their teams were retention factors for them. And you remember that in the findings, we also mentioned that we need to bring retired nurses back to work. This is the type of program that will be tremendous for them to be able to mentor the new generation of nurses in our system. Nursing student and preceptor programs, specifically for long-term care. The aim of this program is to provide support and resources to preceptors and students in long-term care to develop positive student learning experiences and to promote the leadership role of preceptors in the long-term care sector. Results of the survey reflect the challenges in long-term care setting, where residents are more acutely ill than ever before and being cared for by a mix of health and personal support staff. Nurses and residents in this sector experience the tragic impact of not having enough staff or the appropriate mix of NPs, RNs, RPNs, and PSWs to attend to residents and to support one another. Through this program, staff will gain the support to welcome students in their organizations and take on preceptor roles, helping to guide students in the care of older persons. The program also responds to the comments of nurses related to seeking opportunities for growth in their practice. As you can see, we are not waiting. We have rolled our sleeves. We are beginning to deliver new programs, and we are calling on everybody to come on board during the summer and in the months ahead to solve the nursing crisis. The nursing profession has shouldered the brunt of the pandemic in caring for patients, no doubt about that, on caring for families, and on caring for communities across all sectors. We are in the grip of a deep nursing crisis, one never seen before, that is causing tremendous instability and departures. You heard that about 70% of nurses are saying they will change their positions. That equals instability. You heard that from those 42%, which is much higher than in our previous survey, are looking at departing, exiting our awesome profession. That means travel. The impact of Ontarians, this will impact Ontarians' quality of life, nurses' health, and financial outcomes, and the province is in trouble unless we act now. And moreover, there is a crisis across this entire country, but Ontario is having a tougher time. So let's move together. The nursing crisis can and must be fixed if government, employers, educators, and associations, all of us together, act swiftly, purposefully, and in a sustained manner. That's a key word, sustained manner, not like tap water on and off, to build back a strong nursing workforce, healthy work environments for a healthy Ontario. Our report adds to a growing body of research that shows the health consequences of both the pandemic and the understaffing that preceded the pandemic and was exacerbated during these past 2 years for health organizations, for RNs themselves, for the province. The impact is severe. We must act. LTC organizations, the Ontario Hospital Association, and Ontario Long-Term Care COVID-19 Commission all have recognized the need for more RNs in Ontario. I remind you, OHA, the Ontario Hospital Association, called for 10,000 additional RNs in the next 5 years. Commissioner Morocco recommended 20% RNs, 25% RPNs, 55% PSWs, and 1 nurse practitioner for every 120 residents in long-term care. That was a recommendation in his report. Colleges Ontario and the Council of Ontario Universities, COU, are eager and ready to further increase the BSN enrollment to help rebuild the nursing profession. We all know the problem. We all want to help. We have every confidence that the nursing profession can recover from this crisis. I say it again, my colleagues, Dr. Holloway, President Morgan Offord, say it again. If the government, employers, educators, nursing associations, and other associations work together on the findings and recommendations of this report. Some rebuilding has begun. Much more, faster, and sustained is needed. Together, we can and we must deliver. We must do so urgently, and we must keep at it. It will take time. It will take funding. It will take a persistent effort. The results will lead to a healthier nursing profession, the effective functioning of our province health system, and better health outcomes for Ontarians. Not doing so is simply dangerous, and it would be reckless not to do so. Thank you, and I'm passing it back to you, Dr. Holloway. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Grinspan. We will now take questions from reporters. So we have several media who are present, and please send us your questions.
Can we, Victoria, can we promote them to panelists? I see Karen Graham raised it.
The first question from Karen Graham, so promote you for as panelists.
Okay, so we're inviting media. Please submit your questions.
So Claudette, we are going to unmute several media outlets that are registered for this event.
Thank you.
CBC Radio Canada, CBC News, CTV, and CTV Kitchener, and Wendy Glauser, who is a freelance writer. If we could unmute them and you can ask your questions. And then we can move to general questions from the audience.
Thank you.
And if there are members of the media who want to ask a question, please go ahead.
I see that Karen has her hand up. I don't know if she was unmuted.
Yep, she should be able to speak.
Okay. That's great. Karen, do you still have a question, or you are good if we move on? I'm afraid we have an issue with the mics. That's why I'm asking again.
We are ready to take your questions, media.
Maybe we move to general questions. Anu, I don't know if you have a question. Anu, cool. Feel free to ask, please, or anyone else.
Yeah, this time I think we unmute the participants.
Great.
Thank you.
If anyone has a question, please go ahead.
It says, I am having technology problems, someone is saying, and several people are saying, Karen Graham and several. So there is an issue with maybe our technology, or maybe it's their technology, I don't know. Karen, you can put the question in the chat.
We will promote anyone who has a question to panelists and unmute you. Just let us know, please, in the chat.
Anukul, can you try just so we know that actually the system is working?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Doris. I'm able to talk. I was just wondering if people have questions, they can either send their questions in chat or raise their hands so that we can then make them panelists, as Marian said, and then unmute their mics. Thank you.
So, Anukul, people may not know that you were a reporter up to a couple of weeks ago, and now you're working at RNO. I don't want people to be confused. So now you can ask us a question still as a reporter. You are kind of just coming.
Yes, with your permission, Dr. Doris, my question is, what significance does this report have, especially about, it's so close to the election date? What significance does this report have, and what are the impact that you're hoping that this report will have on the elections?
So let me, if I may, and I know my colleagues will add to it, but I want to first comment one thing. What is very concerning with this report, you may remember at the time you were a reporter that we released a report about a year ago. This report shows that although we have begun some interventions, the situation is even worse, it's more serious. We move to more restlessness in the profession, in the sense of more instability of people that are going to move positions, which means probably the issue of increased agency nursing, etc. People just moving to have control over their lives, basically, or being better paid. And second, Anuku, more people are saying they're going to exit. In the previous one was around 29%. Now it's about 42% of the 70-something, 75 that will change positions. So the situation is more serious. The impact on the elections is a message to all the party leaders. Whoever is coming into power needs to take immediate action, because the health of Ontarians and the actual health of our healthcare system is what's at stake now. The crisis in nursing has become deeper than ever before. And this is why you're seeing us absolutely so very worried.
Thank you, Dr. Greenspan. Marion, you have your hand up, and we also see a question in the chat from Barbara Anderson. Is it about the same thing?
Yes, I was just letting people know that if you have a question, please put it in the chat and we will promote you to panelists. So you can go ahead, Claudette.
Thank you. So the question from Barbara Anderson, for retired nurses possibly coming back to paid employment, how will pension income implications be addressed?
I can address that if you wish, Dr. Holloway?
Please.
So we haven't worked the details of pension. What we are saying now is that the retired nurses that wish and can and still have, remember, within 3 years, you can even practice. But we are saying the retired nurses, at the very least, we need them back to mentor internationally educated nurses that want to join the workforce, mentor new graduates, mentor nurses moving from one unit to another with all this and restlessness of changing positions. And we're saying they need to be paid. So it's not just they're coming back because it's a nice thing to do. Of course, it's a nice thing to do, but they retire for a reason. So we are saying we need them back, bring as many as possible back to work to serve as mentors for those that are joining the position. Why? For 2 reasons. The nurses that are already in the workforce, as you heard, their workloads are too heavy for them to serve as mentors. Of course, they want to do that, but it's just too much on their plate already with the shortage of nurses. So the retired nurses can come back, have the capacity, the expertise, all the years under their belt, be paid, same as any other nurse. And we haven't worked the issue of how retirement and the benefits and all of that will work, because likely that will depend even organization by organization. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Dr. Greenspan. Marion, your hand is up again, and I see we also have a question in the chat from Kim Jarvie. It's about the same thing.
Yes.
Thank you. So the question from Kim, what would you say are the most promising opportunities to immediately increase the RN workforce? Morgan, would you like to take that one?
Thanks, Dr. Holloway. So the most promising, because it is the most immediate way to increase the RN workforce, would be the expedited registration of internationally educated nurses who are already living in Ontario. So we're not talking about recruiting nurses internationally to come to Ontario. We're talking about the 20,000 nurses who are internationally educated and currently are living in Ontario, who are waiting for registration. So making sure that they are supported through the college application process, through the supervised practice experience program, to allow them to be able to practice in the place where they're living already. As well as a longer term option would be really looking at making sure we have good access to bridging programs. So looking at individuals who are PSWs being able to bridge to RPN, people who are RPNs being able to bridge to RN if that's what they want to do, and making sure that those bridging opportunities are available in more locations. There's not a lot of bridging programs that are currently available. So opening up programs and access would really help to get people educated more quickly. And then also looking at compressed timeframe programs for individuals who already have degrees and want to start a career as a nurse, making sure there's compressed timeframe programs and opportunities, because those are the options that take less than 4 years to get people registered as a nurse in Ontario.
Thank you, Morgan.
Dr. Holloway, I do have another question from one of our participants, and I will leave you to decide who can answer it. It's about, what about utilizing injured nurses to mentor?
Dr. Greenspan, could you take that question, please?
Happy to do that, Dr. Holloway. That is a very important question, right? It's a question about accommodation. And the reality is, depending on the setting, I absolutely think, even though it's not something we ask in the survey, that should be explored. Because injured nurses could serve as mentors in a variety of capacities. And in the process, can also teach us all to embrace diversity and embrace vulnerabilities of people. How many nurses do we have that continue to work injured? You know what I mean? They keep going, they keep going. We didn't go in detail, Dr. Holloway and President Morgan, on the issue of the dust, the depression, and stress, the scales that we have. The reality is that nurses have, many of them, a minority, but a good minority, like not an insignificant, a lot of also mental health, moral injury as a result of what they went through. So when you say nurses that are injured, we want to include in your question, nurses that are injured in a variety of ways, whether on the soul or whether physically, whether it's back injuries that is common. And yes, it is something absolutely that we should consider and explore. Thank you for raising that important question.
Thank you, Dr. Grinspan. There's another question in the Zoom user chat. Nurses are from all experiences. Can you offer updated courses or crash courses on skills so the retired nurses and nurses out of the workforce will feel confident? Morgan, would you like to take that one?
Sure. So I think it definitely is something that needs to be looked at and needs to be available, particularly for nurses who are looking to begin in a different area. And I think really the report speaks to the need for mentors and utilizing nurses to work as mentors. So whether we look at people who have recently retired from an area who could return to be a mentor to someone who's new to practicing in that area, or potentially looking at, as the previous question was about, looking at nurses who have had injuries to serve as those mentors. There's some really great programs that Dr. Grinspan spoke about during this presentation, looking at the clinical fellowship, looking at the Late Career Nurse Initiative, and really capitalizing on those opportunities to provide mentorship to people who either are new to nursing, so novices in nursing in general, or novices in an area, and really allowing our more experienced nurses to be able to serve as mentors and providing them with that release time to really be able to develop a robust mentorship and education program for people who are new to a clinical practice area.
Thank you, Morgan. Marion, I don't see any other questions in the chat. Are you aware of any?
Dr. Holloway, that is correct. I don't see any more. I'm going to have one more look.
Okay.
If I can augment Dr. Holloway and President Morgan, people may not all know, especially from the media, that we have at RNO what's called interest groups. They're expert groups of nurses that are expert in a specific clinical area or functional area, like rehabilitation or mental health or administration, etc. We are also working with these expert groups because they are very interested also on developing mentorship programs, and they have a lot of expertise, and we are working with them in developing tools to support the mentorship program. So this goes back to our comments over and over and over on the survey, and what President Morganoffer said, and President-elect Dr. Holloway said, and myself included. It will take all of us together. It cannot be the government or RNO or the educators. It's all of the above, because that deep is the crisis, and we must come out of it for the sake of the profession, and for the sake of Ontarians. And what better day to say that during Nursing Week on May 12th, that our nurses are struggling with workloads and at the same time celebrating our profession. Back to you, Dr. Holloway.
Thanks, Dr. Greenspan. There's a number of questions coming into the chat. The next one is, what were the results of the survey that surprised you and which ones did not surprise you? I'll let you choose, President Morgan or Dr. Greenspan, who will take that question.
So why don't I go first, and then we'll let Doris, so Dr. Greenspan can augment the answer. So although after reflecting, I really shouldn't have been surprised about it, I think the number of people that are looking at leaving the profession, and particularly the number of people that are looking at leaving the profession not for retirement, is what really surprised me. But upon reflection, probably shouldn't have surprised me. So I work as a nurse. I am a registered nurse, and I work as a nurse. So I am very familiar about what the current climate is in workplaces. I know that there's really significant variation across different workplaces around how supported nurses feel or don't feel. I'm very fortunate about the workplace that I do work in. So was a bit surprised by that, but in talking to other members and hearing from people about what their workplace experience is like, probably should not have been surprised by that. I think that's one of the most alarming pieces within the survey results. So although, like, yes, I am very concerned about the level of burnout that nurses are experiencing, there is evidence that supports how we can help people overcome burnout. There's not evidence that supports how we can get people back to work once they've decided it's not for them. And that's what I'm really most concerned about and was unpleasantly surprised about.
So if I can augment, first of all, to speak about President Offord first. That's number one I want to do. This is a leader that moved from a secure environment to long-term care in the midst of the first wave of the pandemic. So it's not only her workplace is different, she's different. And she is not telling you, but I know, and Dr. Holloway knows, and everybody needs to know that there are many weekends that she still is there, including doing night shifts. So, you know, and then, so kudos and thank you. That's number one. And I will never stop recognizing that. To add to what President Offord said, more than surprised me, it scared me. And I say it because it needs to be said. It scared me to see this level of instability in my beloved profession. When you hear that 69 to 75% of respondents are going to shift positions, it tells you revolving door syndrome. And that is not good, not for the profession, not for continuity of care for patients, not for organizations. And it requires then more orientation, more attention. So it's not good. It's very concerning. From that percentage, 42% are saying they are going to be gone. That is a higher number than on our previous survey. So that's the second reason why it scares me. And you don't know Doris as a scared person that gets scared. I believe we believe at RNO we're at the critical juncture, because let us remind you one thing. This survey was done during the third wave. Since then, we have 3 more waves. 3 more waves with more exhaustion, more shifts, more issues of workload, more nurses likely leaving, more days canceled. And so that is the situation. There is restlessness like never before in our profession. There is instability, and yet there is signs for hope. What are the signs for hope? There is an increase of 35% in applications to nursing. So there is a very interesting tension between those that want to leave, either positions or altogether, and those that want to come. So there is an opportunity there. So 35%, we need the government to absolutely provide funding for colleges and universities to uptake every single RN. We said 10%. We should say every single person that is applying to the RN program that has the capacity. And they told us that they can take more than what they're taking. So that needs to happen. Second, to reinforce what President Morgan offered said, the issue of INs. Yes, the College of Nurses is moving a bit faster with how many we fast track. We need to do that triple faster. Because if we don't use the next year, and absolutely next year, into remedies, so the next survey will show improvements, then it's a spiral down. And at some point, then less people start to join. Still, we have people eager to join our profession, both in people that are applying and to baccalaureate programs, and in the internationally educated nurses, that to reinforce what Dr. Holloway and President Morgan said, we are not going to poach from other countries. They are here. They want to be RNs and RPNs in this province. We estimate that 14,000 of them want to be RNs working with patients. They're not working with patients now. We need to fast track that. So there is signs of hope, Dr. Holloway, but if we don't grab it into action and to delivering good results, the hope will turn into helplessness. That's the crude reality. And we have challenges, we have an opportunity. We need to all work together to make it happen.
Thank you, Dr. Greenspan. Now that the technological difficulties are over, we have a number of questions in the chat. One quick one, though, is will this recording be available on YouTube? Absolutely. Dr. Greenspan and our amazing home team will ensure of that. The next question is, has RNAO or other bodies that RNAO is aware of proposed the creation of support groups, for example, special interest groups, for these nurses identified as contributing to mitigation of the nursing crisis? Example, retired nurses, internationally trained nurses. Support of these groups seem essential.
I think, Dr. Holloway, you are involved in one of them, and me too, the international nurses, all yours. This is yours.
Well, absolutely. RNA is ahead on that game. We have two new interests. RNA has several interest groups, over 31, I believe. But the latest two groups are groups that are looking at the indigenous nurses and their allies, and Black nurses leading change, and much more recently, the interest group that is looking at those nurses that are running for political careers. So we already have a retired nurses interest group that has been for some time, and through collaboration with the International Nurse Educators Care Center, they already, when they enroll to get their papers processed, they get a free membership with RNAO, so they have access to all our resources. President Morgan, do you want to add anything to that?
I think that was a great answer, Dr. Holloway. So there's a lot of work that RNAO is doing to support these groups, whether it's through interest groups or other advocacy work that RNAO has been doing to make sure that these groups are supported. And I think a lot of the strategies that we talked about that would help make things better in our profession would also be really supportive to these groups as they transition into practice in a new area or come back to practice. Just remembering that people who have retired only have 3 years after they're no longer practicing nursing to be able to come back. So we're not, the Return to Nursing Now program is more for people who left for reasons other than retirement and are looking to come back to nursing in Ontario. But looking at some of those programs and really advocating to government and whomever else would listen and be able to make changes, because it's more than just government that's able to, we need more than just the government to make changes. We need everybody to work together to really look at implementing some of these programs.
Thank you, President Morgan. Next question. Keeping in mind the legislation of the Occupational Health and Safety Board, has the CNO, RNAO, and provincial government considered legislating a safe nurse-patient ratio? As a frontline nurse, our ratios can range from 4 to 7 patients per nurse on a day shift on a medical unit. We are basically being told that we're unable to exercise our right to refuse unsafe work. How are we protecting our patient safety and health with these ratios? Dr. Greenspan?
I will start, but I definitely will let President Morgan Offord answer this one because she's living this every day, right? So the issue of ratios was discussed for many, actually over 2 decades already in the US, and there is very many mixed feelings, except of California. No one moved to specific ratios. However, you do remember the long-term care nursing home guarantee that we actually proposed and that Justice Marrocco accepted in its entirety, right? The 4 hours of care per resident per day by RNs and PSWs. And we are saying not average as the province has done, but per resident per day. And within that, we did recommend ratios. We said 20% RNs need to be, 25% RPNs need to be, and no more than 55% PSWs. We also said, and also was a recommendation, 1 nurse practitioner per 120 residents. Now that one is one that we are making great progress. There are already many nurse practitioners in nursing homes, and Minister Phillips and Calandra did move with the next stage of positions for nurse practitioners in long-term care. The issue is this, Dr. Holloway, it needs to be sustained and increased. The crisis is so deep that whatever announcements that they're made cannot be done for the next 2 years, the next 3 years. It needs to be permanent solutions. Every single 120 residents across this province should have 1 nurse practitioner. But I want to give it back to President Offord because she lives this every single day in her practice.
It's a great question, Brittany. So it's it would be the government's role to legislate it. And I don't know that they would ever have a legislated nurse-patient ratio across the entire province, because we know there's significant differences between the care and the assessment and interventions that different patients need in different areas. I think if you look at the RNAO policy platform for the upcoming election, we did in the most acute areas put some information in there about what the nurse-patient ratio should be. So in places like starting with the ICU, so making sure that we're in the most acute care areas focused on that. I know it's really difficult to have, and that's what is causing so much of the burnout in nursing, is that we're asking nurses to do too much. We're asking them to take care of too many patients, and we're stretching them too thin and saying, you're now responsible for, normally you'd have 4 patients, 5 is probably manageable if some of them are a bit more stable, but now we're looking at double that assignment, and it really makes people feel and makes nurses feel like they're not able to provide the necessary assessments, interventions, and care to their patients, and that's a really, really terrible place to be in. because nobody feels good leaving the end of their shift knowing that they didn't do everything that they could, even though it's impossible. It's an impossible position that we're putting people in, and you're right. It really is an unsafe position. But we're also in a really difficult position as nurses, because we can't say, well, it's an unsafe position, so I'm choosing to, refuse this assignment, because then there's nobody to take care of and provide that necessary assessment and intervention to those patients. I would say there's a lot of work. If you do work in a unionized hospital, there's a lot of support that you can get through your union for this. So I'm not with ONA, but would say, make sure you are filling out those workload forms. That really is a union issue. Our RNAO is very supportive of ONA and the work that they do around making sure that workplaces are safe for nurses, because what's safe for nurses is safe for patients. And I think we really need to focus on that and continue to speak out and share with the public about what it is that's going on. The public needs to know and really should be concerned about some of the ratios in hospitals and what we're asking people to do. What we're asking nurses to do. And I think that it's really important that nurses continue to speak out, to share their experience, and to really advocate for patient safety, because it's not complaining about your workload, it's advocating for patient safety. RNAO provides a lot of support around that. So if it's something that you're interested in doing, I'd recommend connecting with our communications department for support. And I know that's all. I brought ONA in, and they're not here to speak to this, but they generally are also very supportive of making sure that those workload forms get filled out. And those, I know it's additional work, but they actually in many cases have led to positive change.
I would like to augment a bit with the President Offer spoke about areas where instead of 5 is 6, then instead of 6 is 7. This is exactly when you look at that at our survey and the third wave. That's exactly when what happened in hospitals, for example, was instead of 1 patient in ICU, which is the normal ratio anywhere in North America, not in the world, but certainly in North America, nurse RNs that are the experts, especially in ICU, they had 2 and sometimes 3 patients. I want to highlight this for the media. What does it mean? It's like if you were reading 2 books of Kafka or Sartre. That's the difficulty of those books compared to an ICU patient. And you're reading them both at the same time, processing both. It's impossible. And it was reflected when you look at the DAS, the scale, the depression, anxiety, and stress. It's no wonder that although a minority was a large minority that had issues with depression, anxiety, and stress. It's not surprising when you have that level of persistent heavy workloads. President Offer said, people shouldn't be leaving their shift feeling they didn't accomplish what they needed to accomplish for patients. Every nurse comes to work wanting to do the best for their patients. Every nurse comes to work not only to do the tasks, which are all important, also to do them in a way that they are with patients in a good way. That was impossible during the third wave, absolutely impossible. So the level of both depression, anxiety, and stress as represented in a formal tool, the DAS, and also the level of restlessness, right? I'm going to leave this sector for another sector to kind of see if in another sector I can have more control over work, basically, right? It's all in that survey. The concern is we are not on the third wave, we are on the 6th wave. So more time has passed, more nurses have left. And hence why we need to rewind to help the profession so the profession can help Ontarians.
Dr. Holloway, we have
Yes.
a question from Christine.
Yes.
She's raised her hand and we'll unmute her.
Thank you. Go ahead, Christine.
Christine, are you able to talk?
Yes, we can hear you.
I think she'll have to write her question in the chat box.
We'll put her back in the queue and you can continue with the questions in the chat, Dr.
And maybe, Marian, you can ask Christine, because she was trying before to put the question in the chat, and you can read it for her so she gets the answer. Thank you.
Yes, I don't see lots of engagement in the chat, which is wonderful. And the challenges that are identified in the chat are certainly being addressed by the recommendations in the report. I see there's another question here. Promoting the use of nurse managers may be good. I'm not quite sure if that was only a part of the question. I'm just trying to follow up on that one.
I'm talking away and I'm on mute. You'd think after 2.5 years we'd know about this. There's a question higher up in the chat around, and I don't have it right in front of me, but I believe that it was related to nurse managers and having clinical managers rather than business managers.
Okay.
I think is what the content of that one was. I'm just looking for it in the chat to tell you.
There's a lot in the chat.
At 11:26 a.m. From Zoom user. We need to return to a medical model. Do you see it there?
Yes, it's more of a statement than a question, but certainly we could address it here. We need to return to a medical model where nurses are managers who understand our challenges, not business model with business admin. Doris, you're Dr. Greenspan, you're muted.
I would be happy to take it on, because my gosh, I addressed it in my dissertation gazillion years ago, and here we are again. Every time that there is a crisis, partially it's because we have put models that don't fit. So I wouldn't call it a medical model, but reporters sometimes call it a medical model. Is really a clinical model, right? A model where people that come from clinical practice understand clinical practice, not only business models, right? We went through this in the 90s. We went with this in the 90s, and here we are again. In fact, you need to know that we are finalizing a position statement on this. So you will be very, very proud. We're finalizing a position statement that our Nurse Leadership Network will also review. And yes, nurse managers need to be nurse and no management and leadership, but they need to understand clinical practice, because otherwise, yes, you can put six more patients or 7 more patients, or just replace an RN with whoever, or whatever is the situation, right? Because you don't understand the impact on the patients and on the profession.
Thank you, Dr. Greenspan. Another question. Nurses have a right to refuse unsafe work, but exactly how about making the workplaces more safe so that there never has to be a refusal of work? And these are the things that we've addressed in the report, the recommendations that would not only make the workplace safe for the client, the patient, but make the workplace safe for the nurse. And we're talking about safe not only in a physical sense, but also in the mental sense, because the stress of unsafe workloads and the challenges bear an immense toll that eventually, and we know from literature that stress has an untold burden on the body that starts to result in things like high blood pressure, and then you've got all those complications that come with stress on the body. President Morgan, do you have anything else to add there?
Yeah, I think you make a really good point around making sure that workplaces are safe, and it's more than just physical safety. It's about psychological safety and making sure that workloads are also safe. Workloads are a really difficult one because it's very complex to measure and to really quantify. what the workload is. And there's not always a great tool that's good across all kind of clinical practice settings. But I agree, we really need to be working towards and partnering with all of the associations and all of the groups that are at workplaces to make sure that we do have safe and supported workplaces so that nurses are really able to thrive. I think it's going to be a difficult, and it's been a long time getting to this point in the profession where we are at this point in the crisis. I'm really hopeful that the recovery won't take equally as long, but it's not going to be a quick fix. And we really need to make sure that we're being mindful about how nurses have been impacted, not just by COVID, but also by the other crises of shortages of nurses, and that kind of that working in like constantly working in an environment that's really stressful, and the toll that that takes on people, and how we're able to kind of recover and rebuild, and not to take, but build back better as a profession, and to really always be thinking about how do we make this best, not just for our nurses, but also for our patients, our residents, our communities, so that we really do have a safe, supported workplace that's able to provide the best possible evidence-based care to the people that we take care of, and the people that we're responsible for a large part of their health and well-being. And we need to make sure that we're taking care of our own health and well-being while we make sure we're doing the best work we can.
Thank you, President Morgan. I want to make sure that Christine has got her question answered. Marianne?
She lowered her hand, Dr. Holloway.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to make a quick comment about when we talked about the administration versus the nursing. I would say that the nurse is in the best position because the nurse brings the nursing skills as well as the admin skills, whereas an admin person probably can only bring the admin skills. So the answer to the crisis is putting nurses in the right place, having the balance that we speak about, having the quotas that we talk about, the ratios. So with nursing, it is a win-win situation. I think there's one more.
And then, Dr. Holloway, I think we need to wrap up because I got marching orders of our director of comms that all of us are booked for interviews. So,
okay. I'm just trying to read this last one here to see if it's a question or just a statement. I will read that anyway. It says safety. The association is doing great advocating for the safety of nurses. I really meant this statement needs to be represented to the government to reduce workplace injuries and the crisis of nurses leaving the field. Absolutely, absolutely. So thank you all so much for your participation. Thanks for our staff who was able to get us through the technological difficulties. This concludes our media conference. Thank you again for joining us. Our Nursing Through Crisis report can be found on our website.